We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 10:07. And we're going to start with the invocation. And since we have a treat with Tony being here today, would you do us the honor, sir?
I would love to.
Thank you.
Let us pray. Lord, this is a good place. It's good to be back at Walnut Grove. And Lord, this is a time of thankfulness. Lord, I am grateful for a place that's green and beautiful with opportunity and new parks and exciting things happening. Lord, it's sort of a blend of what was here and what is coming. Lord, we just give you thanks for that. And Lord, we're grateful for the wisdom of decisions that have been made to create such a place that has a draw to opportunity, Lord, and we are grateful for that. Lord, we pray over our city council and our administrators and clerks and all who are present, who are charged to oversee the continuing opportunity that this place is. And Lord, we just ask you to bless them with your wisdom and watch over them in this time. And Lord, we give you thanks for all that they do to contribute to this place. Lord, there are a lot of sweet people who call this home, and we just ask that you bless every home, for we're grateful that they've chosen this place and that they've been a part of making it a wonderful place, Lord. We give you thanks for that. Lord, for all your goodness, we give you thanks. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tony. Oh, you did a nice job. I'm thankful that I found my glasses this morning. They were in the front bed of the city hall. They were, don't even ask. That's crazy. Okay. Yeah, I was decorating yesterday and it fell off. We'll go ahead and go on to roll call, and we have a full council present. Thank you all for being here. And then on to agenda approval. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda, please raise your hands. And it's unanimous. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and go on to old business, and I'm going to ask Joe to come on up and give us an update on that, please.
I'll start by saying City Council got lucky today. I was going to wear this beautiful floral fall tie. I didn't have pants to match it, so. No, it was a busted morning.
You would have looked very fashionable.
So we're going to start with the library ordinance that we've talked about in our last work session in our council meeting. I had a meeting with Stacy Brown. She's, I don't want to get her name wrong, or her title wrong.
Regional. She's the director of the regional.
So she is the director of the regional library system. A lot of what's in state law and what's in the bylaws and did not flow well with the ordinance we proposed, even though it was kind of a lot lighter than the previous ordinance. Okay. So we're working through that. They're going to update their charter and bylaws for the local library, and she's going to do a lot of that with Councilmember Pilgrim to be able to get those in line with their charter. So they have a little bit of cleaning up to do. My recommendation is that we table that library ordinance until they get theirs corrected. That way we're in line with that instead of fixing it once to fix it again.
And when would we table this to next year?
My hope is just early next year. That way we're not sitting on it too long.
Do we need a motion to do that, or?
We never took it up.
Okay, I didn't recall. Okay,
No.
thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you, Joe. Go ahead and go on to new business, and Resolution 2025-07, the one-time salary increases for all city employees. And if you don't mind, Joe, I'd like to go ahead and talk about that one. Okay? The one-time salary increase for all city employees is not a bonus, but a retention thank you. for employees who have been here for a period of time. For new employees, as you can see from the resolution, it is tiered for the amount of time that you've spent here. It is typical of a lot of cities and a lot of businesses to do this for their employees. People always say, are you gonna give them a Christmas bonus? We can't give Christmas bonuses, but we can award retention and time on the job. We did this last year. It was worked into the budget for this year to ensure that we have enough funds, and we actually have more funds than we need based on what this tiered system is. And that's what this is, just like last year. And it would be something that would be given to employees in their paycheck probably the second week to ensure that they get it in a timely manner. And this is gonna come up for a vote at the next council meeting on December 11th. Are there any questions or comments or anything like that?
I will make a comment, just because it came up with me this week with someone asking about it. And I was kind of explaining how we did it, and they're like, well, you know, don't people usually get something like that based on their salary? And I said, how would that be fair to all our employees? I said, because some have lower salaries than others, and yet the ones with lower salaries may have been with us the longest.
Right.
So I felt like having the retention bonus on this schedule works much better and is more fair to our employees.
I agree with you, Max. Okay. Any other comments or anything?
I think this is wonderful.
Okay. All right, so Lynn, if you would, make sure this is on the next agenda, okay? Thank you. All right, Joe, now I'm gonna ask you to come up, and I'm sure you're gonna ask Joe to do some information maybe, but
Absolutely.
thank you.
So as you may have saw in the packets, we do have a conditional use application for 2610 Leon Avenue, and it's right across the street from City Hall. I'm not aware of that. It's two parcels, one where the house sits and one that's right on the corner. And what they're hoping to do is turn that into a place of worship. So this conditional use, as you go through it, has all their questions answered in a statement on the back. There is a site plan, which Mr. Joe Walter will talk about a little bit more, his technical expertise. A big thing I would like council to consider as they review this and as they hear more conversations is traffic patterns and flow as it goes in. I did recommend to the church, that wasn't stipulation for that application, however, it's gonna come up in planning and zoning, it's gonna come up here, is how they plan on controlling traffic out of the church. My recommendation is to have a single right turn lane, and then that way they can go down all the way to the stoplight if they need to turn left. It's only 3/4 of a mile out of the way, but it would drastically reduce traffic to that stop sign there. And then most of everything else Joe Walter will speak on.
Okay, let me ask, so I'm clear on right turn, because in reading, it sounded like they were going to not utilize any of the coming out on 81. It would all come out on Park Street, is that correct?
To my knowledge, yes. And a lot of that's, as I stated, was gonna be fleshed out in the planning and zoning meeting. We did have that conversation as well. I'm not sure about, with it being non-residential at that point, if they would need a decel lane to even utilize that. I don't think they'd be able to do that anyway. And those are conditions that, the city council has the right to question, is if it's safe for someone to be able to turn into that driveway.
Yeah, because what I envision even on that is they go down Park Street and they'll go to at most a circle or turn around in somebody's driveway to come back out to 81 and still come out to make left turns on 81 rather than going around to the light.
Right.
Would you just go over briefly again what this conditional use is and what we are looking at today?
Absolutely. So the conditional use itself is to use a R1, correct?
Mm-hmm.
An R1 lot as a place of worship. And that's the parcel with the house on it. So the one right next to it is C1, so they are two different zonings. Their plan for that C1 is for the drive to the parking lot area. As far as our ordinance, there's a couple of requirements that they have to meet to be able to utilize that conditional use. One would be the parking. I believe it's one parking space for every 4 seats inside of the church. There's a couple of setback requirements which that property can definitely meet inside of their plan. And, is anything listening to?
There's some buffering requirements as a supplemental standard, that they have to do. And I think the 3-acre requirement's one that is sort of raised some not questions, but, some good questions about that because, I think part of what the council and the city will just want to kind of chew on is you've got a house that was Wayne and Kathy's house, and now they want to turn it into a church. It's got a split zoning. You have a couple of options you could do on how to address it because the church places of worship in your zoning ordinance are permitted uses in some district, and they're also conditional uses in others. And there's some history on that, Maxine, to answer your question
Okay.
last night, which
Thank you.
I was still up and saw that, so I did my homework before I got here.
That's the only reason I sent it, so y'all could maybe at least have a moment of thought rather than me asking here.
And I won't get there to that just yet.
Okay.
So it's set up as because churches, places of worship, because of their impact and, the activity around them, when this was amended in 2016, we made those a conditional use in a lot of districts to give council, planning and zoning a chance to take a deeper dive into it. Because you have activity, it could be limited to couple hours on a Sunday morning, but if it's truly fulfilling its mission, there's activities all during the week. So there's traffic and lights and kids running around, and so part of what that site plan is supposed to be able to present to you all is how they're gonna mitigate the impact on the neighboring properties with buffers or maintaining buffers, and also how to address the traffic. So the site plan that was submitted, the engineer showed a deceleration lane on Park Street as being asphalt. And it's not to scale, but so I don't know 100% if it meets your requirements, but that's more of a development issue. And then they still show the paved driveway on 81 and then the gravel driveway. And then they put to be able to have a driveway in it that wasn't on GDOT, because as you all are aware, GDOT is very particular and it's very expensive to do a GDOT driveway. So the route on Park Street makes a lot of sense. I'm not quite sure about the right turn I'm not sure where, Joe, you were discussing that possibly being
Park Street?
right.
Just because of the stop sign being so close.
So you were suggesting making this wider, or am I trying to do something here?
Making this a right-on-way as they exit.
Ah, okay, all right. Okay, all right. Okay. All right, so a concrete triangle would solve that. Should. So to back up a little bit, and if y'all, I don't know who all was copied. I just saw me on Maxine's email last night.
I didn't copy the rest because I more wanted to just give y'all
Yeah.
time to think about the question
Right.
that came up in my
The
mind.
first question had to do with the fact that there's a split zoning on this. The bottom part, zone C1, which is your neighborhood commercial, and R1 was where the Wayne and Kathy's house is. So the first question that Maxine had was about the split zoning and is that gonna be problematic? Part of it, I think, was done to be able to have 3 acres to meet your requirement for a place of worship. And the second question, just hold that thought, was Church at the Grove is zoned, it's an agricultural zoning district. And how was it permitted to do? So the answer to that question is, when it was brought in before the city, which was 2015, the 2012 ordinance, churches or places of worship were uses by right in the AG district.
Okay,
These.
okay,
However, there was a lot of things wrong with that version of the zoning ordinance. So we came in, Lamar got us to come in and we did a big rewrite in 2016, 2017, and we expanded that to put the table of uses and the supplemental standards. And at that time, we decided to make places of worship a conditional use in certain zoning districts, which is, I think, R1, R2, and
It didn't include AG, that's all I
it didn't
remember.
include AG at the time. Right, so technically, Church at the Grove is a non-conforming use now.
Mhm.
So we can, that's a cleanup we could discuss maybe as an outcome of this. But just to give you an idea, that was, there was a lot that we were trying to work through then because some things have been left out when the city adopted the 2012 ordinance, that the city attorney at that time did. So we, there's still always gonna be some, zoning ordinance is sort of a flexible document. So I mean, the applicant or the city has a couple of options. If it was, it could either leave it as it is, depending on possibly the church's future use for that corner, if they wanted to do something that was down the road, if they grow and move on. Cleaner for zoning wise would be possibly to, and I will defer to the attorney's opinion on some of this, would be to zone it to all to R1 and because the buffers are all better because commercial to residential, if you do anything on this corner lot, you'll have to buffer it so much, there's not really a whole lot of room except maybe for a pumpkin patch or something. But or you could zone it all to O and I, which is I believe the Methodist Church is zoned O and I. So I mean, that's another option, but it sort of weighs out what they want. Right now, they just show they want to fulfill their needs of getting the driveway in there and parking and being able to use that facility for worship. So I think there's some flexibility there since, and I really did in their statement of impact and their letter of intent, they talked about what they wanted to do, but they didn't really, and I may not have thought they need to go into what our future plans are. So some of this you'll have to draw out during the public hearing.
I have a question. These
Sure.
property that we are discussing, these two properties,
Yes.
they're both in the downtown overlay?
No, they're not actually. They're outside of it. The other side of the street
Thank you.
is. So no, otherwise there'd be additional stipulations.
Thank you.
No. And I was scouring for looking for a map, but I didn't bring a printed one with me, but no, they're not. I did check that.
I did too.
Joe and I had a conversation, I think by email. He sent me some stuff and we kind of worked through that to do my homework. It's not in the watershed protection district because 81 is the ridge line. A lot of some of the comments I had for Joe were more development related, which would be worked out. I have some, I want to make sure that that decel lane, if it goes in, there's a big set of gas meters there that aren't on here, something with Lawrenceville Gas, and then there's some, I'm concerned about the downstream drainage, that all that gets incorporated. That's not a zoning issue, so I don't want to get in the weeds on that.
How about the, do we know how big the parking lot will be? And I'm asking because, like the impervious surface, how is that gonna affect stormwater drainage
Well,
on that
it's,
corner?
I don't have an acreage on, it didn't put in, the engineer didn't put his impervious surface. Actually, the gravel would actually help because it would pull, a lot of the water would infiltrate and they would have to kind of demonstrate that. They show a pond on here. And that pond is, they just, at this stage, you just kind of show it. It's up in the corner. And Gus is hard, he uses funny colors, so it's hard to see. But and that would be sized, once they do some more development. If this was all gonna be asphalt pavement, his runoff would be a lot more pronounced, and then it would be some, it would have to be something to really be looked at because it wants to drain off to the northwest there. The Carter's in the Aurelius. But from now, it would be basically the drainage at the road will be handled in the road, and any roof drainage or there's very little. There's a couple landscape islands, and then just basically a curved area for the septic field to kind of keep that from being driven over. And this gravel, if it's properly maintained, would definitely help with the infiltrating and slowing down the water as it, and if the grading would be done just to kind of direct what water was flowing off site into that pond.
Okay.
And that could be worked up as a, I mean, it would have to follow your regulations no matter what.
Right.
Because I believe they're gonna create, I mean, they could almost argue they weren't gonna create 5,000 square feet of impervious surface. But that parking lot is basically 2419, 44, 64,
I can't even see it.
like 90 feet wide from the curb over to the edge, and then another probably 100 something feet long. So that's a 10,000, probably 20,000 square feet of gravel. So, yeah, and I printed a bigger one out because I could. We could always ask them to provide a scale copy so that we would, who don't have young eyes, could see it. I mean, that could be, they could bring that to you, back to you all when you're formally hearing it. The challenges with leaving it split zoning is you're gonna have buffers on it. If you were doing anything on the C1 piece, there'd be a buffer on that property line, which might make it basically, and a buffer on the line next to the Aurelius, so it would make it almost impossible to use it. But as far as the ability of them to take the house and turn it to a place of worship, getting some questions from them about their activity patterns and all that, if you address some of the traffic, and I imagine their site lighting would be minimal, that's something just kind of gauge from them, is how busy they're gonna be, and have they talked to their neighbors, and, are they gonna be good neighbors? And sort of work, I think that a lot of that would need to be worked out in your hearings.
Have they said anything, I didn't see it, what they plan to do with the land that's between Park Street and the church, going down that driveway? Is that just gonna be a grass area that's not ever used, or?
I don't know, Joe may have had some conversations with them. I don't know, and I think that's a good question. Right now, I think they've added it to be able to get the 3 acres, because that's your requirement. It also makes it, and also to get the other ways to get that driveway in there where you're not trying to build a DOT driveway. It's probably cheaper to buy that piece.
Right.
Yeah, well, the bottom would have to build
Instead
a
of having
driveway. And
to
I'm not
do
sure they
something
could get,
with
with
it.
the site distance, I'm not sure they could get a new, that's $500,000 or more for a desaling right there. So,
I'm just thinking C1, if that's a C1, and it's not being used as C1, and obviously the church, if they were to use that grassy area, I would imagine it would be for kids' activities, which isn't gonna be a super safe area for children to be playing. Has that been talked about at all? I mean, I know that's not the children's safety, maybe. I feel like it is a concern, maybe it shouldn't be.
So my conversation with them so far, and just to keep it kind of in scale, is I think their congregation is no more than 30, and it's an elder congregation. I don't think there's many youth involved in the first place, but that could change, obviously. But on that parcel, a lot of it is wooded, and they don't plan on, from what they relayed to me, is they don't plan on having a big clear off of that wooded area. It's mostly just gonna be for the driveway.
With them being an elderly congregation, do they plan on this continuing to be a church for the next 50 years, or do they see this church phasing out in the next
That's the
15 or
thing.
20 years?
Churches are like businesses. They're either gonna grow or they're gonna fail. They might say they're a small congregation, but churches survive on their nonprofit. So we lose the tax base. But they're nonprofits, so they depend on donations.
Congregation.
So if the congregation don't grow, the church is gonna fail. Then what do we do with an abandoned church? So they're gonna have to grow or close one. So they
Okay,
can't
let
say
me-
we only got 30 members, that's all we're gonna do.
Let me ask you a question. If we give a conditional use, let's suppose we give them exactly what they want. What does that mean for the future if they do grow and they need to move somewhere else? Does that condition follow through with next ownership, or does it stay, does it revert back to where we are now?
Well, the conditional use, if it's granted by council, would apply to the property in the legal description, so
Okay.
it would be this piece. So it would stay with that piece. Unless, if someone came in later, let's say they're blessed and they get some new membership and they grow and they need more room and they just can't do it here because there's no sewer.
Right.
So they're gonna move on. I'm thinking optimistically as a gentleman who serves a church
Right.
that's, you know, we got the roof trusses put up this week, so we're rocking along. So if it's zoned R1, and this is why y'all really want y'all to chew on what to do with the zoning part. It could be used back as a residence, but he's got a residence with a big gravel parking lot. I mean, or someone could come in later and approach you all about trying to request petition and zone it to all commercial, and then in case you get you all get to chew on, is that an appropriate use for there? Because I believe a piece across the street on the south side of the park, I believe, is also zoned C1. And this is right across the street from, your gateway to your downtown. There's a lot of those. They could come in and want to do, I could see that possibly being used as a professional office.
Right.
Like where the engineer used to be up there in youth next to the water authority, that was their office, and now I think it's physical therapy or something. I mean, it could be used for another, they would have to come back in. The conditional use if granted, or the rezoning to a zoning district that permitted a place of worship would,
So it stays with it, so if
Yeah.
another church wanted to come in, they can
Correct.
come in without requesting anything. Anything
Correct.
else we have to look at.
correct, unless they wanted to come and do something they wanted to modify the condition of the
Okay.
conditional permit. But that would have to, and I would structure it if y'all chose to approve it, once you had your hearings, is to kind of place it so that, if they want to vary from that, they'd have to come, they called up here and said, hey, this is, a New Beginnings Church, we need a place to grow, they've moved on, but we want to do this, we want to make that wooded lot a soccer field or something. So then you have to have those discussions, because
Okay.
back to Erica's concern, if this was graded off and, this was like a big lawn, then I would talk to them about trying to do some fencing and some buffers along the road, just to kind of help keep anybody who's out there using it from getting too close to the road during whatever activities. So the good thing is you all have a lot of opportunity when you actually hear this to have those discussions and, to look at those use implications, ask them some upfront questions and try to get it just right. I think whatever you do, the conditional use, we should probably recommend that it apply to both pieces of property, and maybe that's why you may want to consider getting that C1, ask them to incorporate that and get it zoned R1, so it applies for both pieces.
So really, they could apply for a rezone for an R1, which gives them looser requirements since they are a church, or they could go C1 and they would automatically be able, if approved.
Correct, but,
Okay.
and if y'all were to consider the zoning, then you could apply the same conditions that you would for conditional to address the impact, because I think a lot of it is the impact of the use for
Right.
that, if it was a house, it's the normal residential. If it was a dentist office, it'd be those impacts, it'd be daytime, it'd be pretty, but this being this 25 cars in there, 20 cars in there on a Sunday, and, they have a lot of other breakfasts and Bible studies and all. But I mean, it would probably be in and out, there's not a lot of traffic, but it's concentrated. If it happens to coincide with the school traffic or whatever traffic, then Park Street is, I'm not speaking to y'all, but the few times when I'm on it, it's a challenge to get out because of the nature of 81, and so I would certainly want to.
Yeah, it probably kind of compares to the other two churches on 81
Yeah.
in downtown.
I had a conversation with John Ward, and he was talking about development along state highways. And actually, this came up in a conversation with you and I, and how development that is going to be entering and exiting off of state highways, there may need to be some conversations with DOT about that.
Traffic study.
And a traffic study. So that's one concern, is a traffic study. And I understand that their membership is very small right now, but my hope for the church is that they're successful and they grow. And in order to protect that property value so that they actually make a profit if they grow so large that they're able to move somewhere else, I would think it would make more sense to rezone it C1 as R1. Less and less people are going to want to build homes on this state highway in the middle of downtown Walnut Grove. So as rezoning at R1, that's not going to be long-term goal. Great for the church. Rezoning at C1 would be most beneficial. But if we do that, how does that impact us as a city as to say what can go on that property in the future?
Anything that's on our list.
That's what's concerning to me, because if we make it C1,
It's anything that's on the
Anything.
list.
if we make it R1, it's very restrictive, but someone can always come and ask for a rezone in the future. Because I do agree with you that more and more businesses are gonna wanna come along that corridor.
And I mean, ultimately, it would be more valuable to the church as a C1 if they're reselling, but that means it's gonna be more costly to them up front with the small congregation.
Well, talking about the costliness, you know, C1 is highly desired right now, especially in Walnut Grove, and especially in that location, because it is co-located with our budding new downtown and the Parkway
Right.
and the high school. A church brings no income. A commercial property developed for commercial purposes would be a lot of potential future income.
But it can always be switched in the future, right?
Yes.
Because we've got a situation right now across from the park,
Right,
where if it's C1, we could have somebody wanna come buy it in the future
right.
and come in and park monster vehicles.
Right, and that's the question I have is they own this property now, so what's the best to do
Joe.
for
Yes.
The
them
parking
and for
here,
us, 'cause
They're saying 15 spots.
Because they're going down Park Street, that's a city street that taxpayers have to maintain.
Yeah.
Not the church, they're not taxpayers.
I'm sorry.
I thought I had found a break in it, and I didn't realize you weren't
Sorry,
done.
Matt. You're fine.
I wanted to, before we moved on to other questions about the parking, they're saying 15 spots, and I haven't looked at the ADA laws recently, but last I read, you have to have at least one AD spot for every 15 parking spots. Is gravel going to meet those requirements now, or are they gonna have to do something else with an ADA spot and access?
The first, yes, it's, right now it's 1 for 25.
Okay,
But if you notice, and I know it's hard to see, but on their site plan where I guess there's a couple of turnarounds, I guess, that were the paved driveway. Of course, here it's spelled paved. They have 2 spaces right up front, I guess, by where the garage is or was.
yeah, if you pull into that driveway, on the left, there are like 4 spots for parking
So
that's
those-
already there that was with the home.
Correct. Those would have to be striped and would have to be sufficient width
Okay.
to meet the ADA requirements, and between zoning and the fire marshal would check for those they showed 2.
Okay,
And
well, by the
they-
time you make it an ADA, it would only be 2 spots.
Correct, and they have a door, an 8-foot, looks like it's probably he made a wide door for van accessible spaces, so you could offload either side. And I guess the only other, one question and sort of developing on that is, no, you couldn't use gravel because there's no way to safely move someone who's mobility impaired
Right.
on gravel. with an elder congregation, that's a good question for them is, you know, they're trying to minimize their expenses.
Well, and that will
here.
be, that particular drive, unless they pull in and they leave the carport open. I'm familiar with the home itself, inside and out. In fact, Wayne was my mentor for councils. He was my go-to person for all
He was
things
a good one,
council.
too. He was mine too.
Yeah. So, so he saw me more than he wanted to sometimes, I think. But they have a carport, and it could be at some point a drive-through carport. Otherwise, those spots, they would be accessing from 81, not Park Street.
Correct.
And then there's
correct.
a drive, or I don't know if it's an official drive, farther north on the property.
Correct.
that-
That shows
Isn't there a
on-
house back there?
Well, there's a building. It's not really a house, I don't think.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Joe,
Yes, with Joe, me, Joe.
you Joe,
Okay.
and the other Joe too.
Well, and then I have an answer for the previous one first, but please,
Oh, no, go ahead. No,
your
finish.
question, because it
No,
may
no.
be the same thing.
My question is this, as we are talking about this conditional use, I know we're all interested in all of the aspects of the building and parking and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But really what we're looking at today is whether or not we're going to allow this and what conditions we would put on it. And I think some of those conditions that we just talked about need to be traffic or traffic study. Because while in their submission, they indicated that they will encourage and they will hope for, that's not guaranteed. And that's a problem on 81 right there. Another one is the stormwater issue along Park Street. There's already a stormwater issue right now, so that's concerning to me, along with those big gas lines, and would it be allowed? Sewer capacity in the septic tanks. How is that house going to accommodate the 30 people in there? Future growth, what are their plans for future growth? Do we make this conditional change? And then all of a sudden, 5 years from now, they've grown so big, they need to start building over on the other lot. And what we want to make that other lot, if we want to encourage them to go ahead and rezone it to an R1 or a C1 for the city. But I think this first step is making that approval for a variance and whether we're going to allow a church of worship to come in to that spot. Do we need to hear from the people requesting the variance? Were they invited to this meeting? They were, okay.
Well, and so yes, this is, and I appreciate the way y'all do this. This is a formal discussion related to an item that's gonna be discussed future.
Yeah.
So you will hold a public hearing and they will be notified and they will need to come and present as your practice. And they will give the opportunity, a lot of this will get an opportunity to ask those very same questions where we have, the pastor or the, somebody from, other people come to come and speak about their vision. Now, I will, back to the earlier one, the questions about zoning, potential zoning and the conditions is, if the council were going to advertise this and decide to do rezoning the whole thing to C1, you can add conditions, and I'll have Tony can adjust if needed, that would restrict the use currently to a place of worship, I believe. And so anything else that came along, and associated uses, anything else that came along, they would have to come back before the board to request something different. That's one way to look at it. But all I would consider is, if whatever you officially advertise for your hearing, this needs to be, still think you could, this needs to make sure that we follow the state law on what's being considered and what y'all have to consider. There's a good bit of flexibility, and all those are very good points, thinking about your envision Walnut Grove. And we could ask them, require them, the engineer should be able to do some basic traffic generation and give you a report. It's all on ITE strip generation, it's fairly straightforward. Total traffic, AM, PM peaks or, because they're gonna be different than most of the traffic, probably than the traffic pattern, but if it is 30 people, well, maybe that's 15 cars, but it's maybe 25. When are they gonna, you know, when are they gonna enter and exit? How is it gonna, I mean, all that's reasonable to ask, and the ordinance says that you can ask it, and I think the instructions say that. Based on a conversation with Joe, I think the conditional permit may have been sort of a lower bar for investment to apply for, but I mean, I think you could certainly work with them on what's the best combination for now, thinking in the future. And then you all get to make the decision about, do you think whatever change is the best interest of the, and you have the city and those factors of knowing what's gonna happen and what could happen down the road. If y'all are blessed and get sewer on the other side of that ridge, then there may be a sewer line coming up Park Street, and then this becomes a better site for a different type of use. But we're, you know, at this point, and there are some issues about septic. I don't know if they would have to, I mean, even to get this thing permitted, they would have to get a letter from David Dixon that septic met that load.
Right.
And if not, then we'll have to make necessary repairs. So the good thing is the users and the neighbors are protected from that, because they wouldn't permit that load on that system. Or otherwise they'd say, well, you gotta go do X, Y, and Z. And we in Bureau, whomever would want all that before you could issue any building permits. So, and then with Jonathan Fuquay now and water and all that, they would be able to, you kind of get that comfort that all that's been factored in after post-zoning.
This is a super hard question for me, and this makes this job difficult. But I just want to point out, and I know everybody up here is aware, we have 4 other churches that you could throw a rock at. We have a humongous graveyard that we get no tax base from. My voice is even shaky talking about this because I hate the thought of saying no. But how is this church gonna benefit the citizens that pay the taxes in our city?
It won't.
That the other churches aren't already, you know, providing for, yeah.
There's no benefit.
That's
to
the
citizens.
really hard part for me.
But we're here to represent our citizens.
That's right, yeah.
I
Not
have
no
one,
benefit to them.
legal question that, I guess it's legal. All right, we have two lots, and it's not clear to me if the church is actually purchasing both lots. I've read through several times, and it's not clear if they're purchasing both lots or if they're just going to be utilizing the back portion of the C1 lot as their access, and is that going to be like in other words, is the current owner thinking in terms of like a deeded right-of-way or something more along those lines than actual ownership of maybe even the entire C1 lot? Could we be landing on the R1, which does not meet requirements for the 3 acres we're approving, and they're not going to own that other lot? Are we then in a position that we have to give a variance for the 3 acre requirement?
I have a little bit of insight into the details, and from my understanding, it was made pretty clear that anything that the Dimsdales owned there is being sold to the church.
Okay,
both
so they're not
lots.
holding the C1 lot?
That's right.
Okay.
So the variance is requesting both lots. It's on.
Right, the variance,
That means they own.
it marks
they-
both lots, but
They got
the
both.
conditional use,
Right. it's
also
only for
the applicant
Right,
for part of it is the current owner of the property.
Right.
right.
So they can request that for both lots, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're selling off both lots, right?
In order to qualify for the church,
They're gonna have.
they're gonna have to own both lots.
Okay.
I mean, it's a 3 acre, gotta have the whole thing included.
So these lots have not been purchased yet?
No, but I think they are under,
They're under contract.
They're like a conditional contract, probably.
The application, it mentions both parcels, 053 and 054, and the owner who, is Jacqueline Myers, who, at least she used to work with us, small world, is signed for both, so there, and I didn't see a legal, but just to make sure whenever this actually goes forward, that what the parcel numbers and the, you know, and there's a legal description that matches, so the mapping can be updated with reference both. I mean, you've got both parcels mentioned, so that's what's being considered for y'all, what y'all are considering with both lots.
Right,
So it would,
right, but considering both lots, like I said, does not necessarily mean that she's planning to sell those as a unit. She could keep one and have that variance so that the church can, that was my
She
question.
can't do that.
Okay.
The church has to own both.
They have to,
Correct.
okay,
yes, because whatever you did, I mean, what y'all would do would apply to both lots, but, I mean, that's something that would be clarified during your public hearing, you know.
yeah, cause you
We're-
don't know what they might be
No,
thinking they
We're
can
sort of talking
do.
about something that you're gonna be considering, so I wanna be careful that we're not wandering into too much official discussion, because you haven't actually held a public hearing, and so a lot of these questions, I really want y'all to ask again, and the planning commission to ask when it comes for you officially to really, because then your public hearing is being,
Right,
but it doesn't mean, I mean, this is a good idea to go ahead and flesh some of this out so that you all.
so we know what questions to
Right,
ask.
y'all know, yeah, you're all more informed because, before you get, I'm sorry, I was trying to look up the value of that commercial property.
While Joe's looking up, your discussion is great. There is a public hearing that we have to keep an open mind, but there's nothing about what you're talking about. That's what work sessions are for. It was advertised. They knew we were doing it. They could come and talk to us at the same time. It's not a problem. In your quiver of tools, permits, unlike zoning, can have a date of termination or can terminate at the end of the ownership of the person you gave the permit to. So
Okay.
Can you repeat that, Tony? I'm sorry.
you can condition your approval of a conditional use permit to the specific user or to a time period. They can go away. A special use permit or a conditional use permit can be conditioned on time or to the owner that applied for it. And so that's subject to a little manipulation, but that's, you can use that as a tool. Your thoughts are great, and I'll just tell you a bad story. If you go to Snellville's Town Center, right at the entrance, similarly positioned to this piece of property, is a car wash. And the car wash came when Town Center was known to be coming. And so it was unfortunate, but the zoning classification gave it as a right. And so really disappointing to have car wash. And when you do a C1 zoning, you run the risk of having a use like that at the front door to your, but the tool that you can use is to condition it to the use. And then they have to come back before they build a car wash at the entrance to your town center. So those are, and you got a party who's trying to save money.
Yeah.
And that's why all the questions, that's why this isn't a normal thought process. When you say, we'll do a traffic study, well, they can't afford a traffic study. And
I don't think that they
they got
even,
a problem, there's a traffic problem, and I'm gonna have to face it when I leave here today, because I gotta turn left at that same intersection.
You can go around to the light.
You've got a signed traffic study that says this is a problem that needs to be fixed. And it's gonna be worse for 33 older people who think and they probably won't, they probably go to the light because they don't wanna take the chance that I'm gonna take when I leave. So they don't wanna do it, they don't have to pay for that. The council's looking at it as the corner, in the entrance. And so the creativity of what you're doing is, what do you want it to be? It's not likely to be a church, but it could be. They could thrive in the house and build a church on the corner, and it would be a nice church on the corner going in. If you don't want that, then you turn it down and send them someplace else. That's the question. Those are legitimate things to consider. You can't restrict people for religious purposes of using property. There's special rules that we have to go by. But you can say this is front door, it's it really is a commercial piece, or it really is an O&I piece. So don't come here. You know, that's not the place. There are plenty of other places you can build a church in town. So those are legitimate. To incentivize the development, which is most likely, it's not gonna be a church long term. This is just a cheap way to get in and have worship. And with an older congregation, they have a tendency to go away. Or figure out that they can sell this very valuable piece of the land and go use the money to build on a site that's less visible. And so the commercial zoning class is, or an O&I class, or whatever your ultimate use is you want to be on that corner is a really good thought process to incentivize somebody coming in and building. But if I were doing that, I would restrict the uses to what I wanted it to be and incentivize that future. Incentivize the developer to come along and say, hey, church, I'll build you a nice church on the other side of town if you'll let me build whatever y'all want to see there on that site. So those are to condition the uses and get it to, but you want to have both parcels in front of you, restrict it the way you want it to do to both parcels, because there is a single use ask, and then condition it up the way you think it should be. You know, if there's going to be children in the front yard, it has to be fenced. You know, those kind of things. Those are conditions, things that you think of as this temporary use. Whatever those restrictions are, you just add a condition to it.
And do you want a fence at the entrance of your town? What kind of fence would you be okay with?
And it's right at the gateway of our downtown.
All you know, the quality of the fence and consistent with what I think is a long-term structure, which is your city hall. You know, you can have a fence there that would be affordable, but also very consistent and nice. So. But y'all, you know, it's just one of those things it's important. And what you don't want is the car wash.
No, right.
So all your thoughts of concern are really legitimate. So.
Joe, what's our next step?
Next step would be to map out when we can do a P&Z meeting, public hearing. And I would recommend not having a public hearing on the same day we have the council meeting, just in case there's more questions we need to flesh out. Because stuff could come up that we want more clarification on.
You know,
Joe, I have one more question about this. Is the sale of these two properties contingent on this zoning?
I'm not privy to the deal itself,
Okay.
but I will assume.
I'm assuming too, I just wanted to ask to see if you knew. Right.
Yeah, and I was kind of gonna ask, why would we need to know that? Because if there's a reason, you know, yeah. But
I feel like
where
it's
is it real?
important to understand that they're waiting on us. That's what I feel
Okay.
like, but
I mean, I recognize
because I'm nosy.
someone's trying to sell the property.
Yeah.
You what?
I mean, I'm nosy. I want to know, are they waiting
Okay.
on us to tell them?
I just didn't know if you had a thought in mind that would make
I worry about
it.
the impact to the seller, I worry about the impact to the buyer.
Absolutely.
You know, that's, I'm just considering
Yeah,
all
well,
this.
and that was
Worry
my
about the
next
impact
thing
of the
was
city.
whatever we
And
think
the
about,
Citizens.
while we need to be concerned with our citizens, the people that own the property originally that are now deceased, and so it's in their estate.
Right.
That's also a concern because they are residents of Walnut Grove. So while that may be an individual resident versus the others, and of course we didn't discuss too much the neighboring people, and I would certainly,
Right.
I would want to hear from the neighbors their feelings and would encourage them to show up at the hearing so that we know how they feel about.
I'll also say I live, I can throw a rock at Church of the Grove, and I love Church of the Grove. That's the church I attend. But on the Sunday mornings that I do not attend, I can hear their music very well and their drummer.
He's
So
in an aquarium.
I love the drummer, but that's just something that
Yeah, I can hear them too.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say, it's got nothing to do with nothing, but Wayne Dimsdale was a member of a band called the Archmen, and they practiced in there at Wayne Dimsdale's house, and you could hear it all over the neighborhood.
Yeah, you could hear it at my house.
Because he would invite us over, and we said, we don't have to come, Wayne, we can hear you on the board.
And I would say the amount of times that he had a group there, I'm thinking in terms of, a 60 people congregation, the septic system, I'm thinking, okay, that probably no problem, because that's probably about what Wayne had on a regular basis. Maybe not legally okay, but.
If everybody is okay with this, I'd like to ask Joe to go ahead and set up the public hearings. Is there enough time between now and then without rushing it for the planning and zoning group and a separate meeting for us?
Depends on their schedule.
So for planning and zoning, because of the way we had the meeting structure this year,
Yeah.
we have a lot of flexibility to the commission itself. I'll have to reach out to them to see, kind of where they're at right now. Hopefully we can still get that accomplished, probably within the next, after the 15-day mark, but very soon. Because we have to advertise for 15 days and copy and notify the Tribune. I don't think we would hit the December 11th meeting, but if we had to have a called meeting, whatever the council decides, or if it has to go to the January meeting. Because like I said, we could do the public hearing the same day as the P&Z meeting. That may work out pretty well. But if we had to have a follow-on hearing, there's more questions that we may have that the community would probably be interested in that surrounding hearing.
I'd also like to ask that we notify the immediate neighbors to this. We've talked about doing that in the past. I think it's a good idea to make the immediate neighbors aware of the request.
When does the sign go up on the property?
At a minimum 15 days before we have the public hearing.
And that's 15 calendar days, not working days.
Correct.
I would also encourage us, when possible, to avoid special meetings for like one event like that. Because I don't want to get into the habit of we're having a lot of called meetings to accommodate this person or that person because they're in a hurry or they have a contract deadline. Encourage them to change their contract deadline type thing.
I
To
think a big
extend it.
reason we've been doing that a lot is,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to planning and zoning, was for some reason the structure this year, it was kind of ad hoc in a way, instead of it being a mapped out month by month
Right.
meeting, which is what we're gonna be doing next year. We're gonna have it on the same type of calendar basis that we do on meetings.
So, I'm sorry, the sign goes up 15 days before the first public hearing.
At least.
Yeah.
It's
At
15 to
least.
45 days.
That's what I was thinking it was 45, and that's why
Well, that's
I
the
was
window
curious.
for-
It also has to be advertised in the paper, and there is not enough time
ZPL.
before the December 11th meeting to do it.
That timing is usually timed off of the planning commission public hearing. So that's how you set it, so it's gonna be longer than that to get to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's gonna have to happen in January.
In our ordinance, it
At
says,
best.
correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, in our ordinance, it mentions that we have to have the application 30 days prior to a meeting for a public hearing.
Yes.
According to our ordinance.
Well, without getting splitting hairs, if you received an application, if you accepted the fee for it, then the clock has already started. So that, my future advice is don't take the check until you've got a complete application and you sort of hash it out. So in this case, you probably need to try to plan a meeting, at least your first hearing, fairly soon. Look at the next time it goes in the paper and work your way forward, which would be next week or the week after. Count 15 days and try to see if you can get a window for the planning commission hearing. And then after that, you
No more
could
leeway.
also advertise, Tony, a second hearing for council. You advise is advertising the first hearing and then
Just satisfy the requirement for a public hearing, not worry about
is
it.
the planning commission hearing. And then after that, it falls into the next work session meeting cycle. I think you're good. I just know that there are some people who once there is case law that once y'all have accepted that packet, that the clock is starting. So, but I mean, I don't know when that was that this week, last week, did that?
So, yes.
Okay, so you're still within, as long as you have something within 45 days of last week, you should be good. I mean, you don't really have a published set in stone calendar right now that says, if I get it here, I gotta have it there. We don't have, well, we will one day when we have enough activity, so. So, you know, part of it is just getting that, normally they used to meet on the, well, in the past, they would meet on the third Thursday, I believe, and I don't know when they're meeting now. Probably based on availability.
Based on the library.
Donnie and Dominic and maybe.
Based on the advertising in the paper, the earliest you could have a planning and zoning meeting is December 11th. And then after that, it would be council in January.
We're only required the one public hearing for this situation, correct?
You're required to have two,
Oh.
one in planning, it's just the order of consideration
Right.
of zoning actions by your code, says they have a public hearing and you have a public hearing.
Okay.
The satisfying the state law is just to one public hearing, and the one that you really control easily and know when that's happening, and
Is
get
the
the timing right, is planning commission.
Right.
Once it gets to planning commission and is a recommendation to you guys, then it should go on your agenda and stay there until you approve, deny, or table again. So it just stays. If you ever take it off, then you have to start the process over again. So you're timed off planning commission, and as long as you hit that one and then it stays on your agenda until you deal with it, you're in proper order.
Okay.
Can I don't know if it's okay, to make a request that the sign goes up on the property as soon as possible, because I just feel like the citizens, in order to have conversations with us, because they may not be able to attend the public hearing, I would like them to be notified so that they have time to have conversations with council members.
Staff can do that, but they need to be mindful of that process, because the same restrictions go with the sign. It's gotta go up in that same time.
Within 45 to 15 days.
Yeah, it's gotta before, so you just need to put it in the sequence and get it posted as soon as possible.
Technically, can the sign be up longer than 45 days before the hearing? It can't, can it?
It's gotta be up in that time period. So
Okay.
if you posted it early.
You know what I'm about,
No, I'm
Jeff.
just laughing about that some jurisdictions it'll sit there forever, but yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But the key is for the press's benefit is that
I'm thinking about.
you follow the law and you've noticed people that something's gonna happen on this piece of property. And y'all have a very nice sign, and anyone who's interested can find the number or, because a lot of people don't read the paper, but if you satisfy those, and you take minutes of that hearing and you follow your procedures for having the hearing at planning commission and having the hearing before council, you have satisfied the law as best as we can determine for not trying to make a decision without letting all parties know that something's going on. And for you all who think that it's important to let the neighbors go, because they're gonna wanna know what's going on, because they were used to Wayne and Kathy living there, and then I don't know if this has been vacant or rental. They're gonna
Nothing.
wanna have some input for the very same reason. So yes, if y'all were to choose, some jurisdictions will notice adjacent property owners within a certain diameter or distance from the subject property. Some, just the sign in the yard is maybe sufficient. Probably, if it were me and you had two signs, I'd sign Park Street and sign 81, because people won't see 81 because
Right.
they'll see Park Street because you're turning, or you can look across the street and see it and know that something's going on. So
Okay.
I would too.
we haven't had enough of these in a while to kind of remember some of it, but because this one is going to draw a lot of interest from the neighborhood, it's good that you all want to be up front and say, here's what's going
And maybe
on.
not.
Call me if you have questions.
Okay. Is there any other discussion or questions?
Is this church in Jersey? The one that wants to move here?
I believe their physical location right now is actually in Municipal.
It's where?
In Municipal, I believe.
Somebody told me Snellville.
Or it could be Snell.
The applicant lives in Jersey.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got you.
That's why you're using that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Is everybody ready to move on? Yeah, okay. All right, Joan. Vote for the public works people, please.
Wait a minute, it's called Church of Jersey or
So
something.
we have reached out to Ford to get a quote for a F-150, which is kind of lowered down as far as, you know, no carpet, stuff like that, for public works functions. Haven't gotten a response from the regional office yet, but hopefully we will soon. We're also gonna be reaching out to Chevy and Dodge. The only one we're not reaching out to is GMC, because they don't make as many work function trucks anymore. Most of them are, you know, grocery getters. Don't worry, I used to drive one, so make fun of myself there. But as soon as we get those quotes, we're not gonna wait to put it in the packet itself, we'll get it right out to you as we go.
Thank you.
And that'll go on the next work session.
Correct.
Okay.
And then at 150, I'll have the tow capability, or any truck you're considering will have the
Right,
tow
and
capability.
something I want council to think about too is as we draft a CIP plan, things we're assetting off, my hope is that that goes into a CIP schedule. So that way we can utilize that as a head start to be able to fund some of these things.
Okay. And I'll take the last one, Mayor Pro Tem for 2026. I sent out an email to all the council members to talk about, every year we vote on a new Mayor Pro Tem. I've seen one person write back and say that they're interested, but would you all please be aware and have some discussion? Because we're gonna have that on the agenda for the next meeting,
Okay.
on the 11th, and we will be deciding upon that. And if you all wanna have any discussion now, that's fine too.
Well, I'm the one who said I wanted to be mayor pro tem, and I would put my name in for it, so if you have any questions for me, I will answer them.
I already asked you.
Okay. And Linda, you are eligible at this point, if you would like to be considered also.
Yeah, no.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
And I'll say as current mayor pro tem, and I've been fortunate to serve that role for 2 years, I am happy to allow somebody else to take on that role.
Turn it over to someone else. And just keep in mind that the mayor pro tem steps in when I cannot be here, in social engagements or speaking engagements that I have been committed to, or up here during meetings. Fortunately, now that we have Joe as a city administrator, you are not required or asked to sign off on checks. And really, it's to act in my absence, and that's it.
I will say that Rachel's done a great job being prepared for meetings. At the last legislative breakfast, Rachel got up and spoke, and I was not prepared. She was prepared, and I thought she did a great job. And she represented the city very well.
Okay. Any other comments or questions, or, okay?
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead, Maxine.
Before we, just even though we don't have council comments,
Yeah.
you know, there were 3 of us at the breakfast the other morning. I don't know if you guys heard the Secretary of State, but he did make the comment that when I'm looking to get work done, I look to my women.
Did you really?
Yes.
Yeah. That's funny. Okay, all right, is there anything else? No? I'll ask for a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Maxine, all in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you all.